Mhm. Mhm. Okay, we'll start with the Mangalacharan. Om Ajnana-Timirandasya Jnananjana-Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitamena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namah Sri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Gadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeyam Sri Guru Sri Yudapada Kamalam Sri Gurun Vaishnavam Sri Rupam Sagarjatam Sagana Raghunathan Vitam Tam Jivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parjana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Padan Sagana Lalita Sri Vishakan Vitam हे कृष्णा करुणा सिंधु दीनबंधु जगतपति गोपेशा गोपिका कांता राधा कांता नमस्ते तप्त कांचन गौरांगी राधे वृंदावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये वाञ्छाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्येव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः श्रीकृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौरभक्तवृंद हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय हम्म, हम्म, Hare Krishna. Uh, so tomorrow we'll be having another session with Parikshit Prabhu. So that's why I wanted to have the Bhagavatam class today. So today we'll continue with verse 12 from chapter 12, Canto 1. In the previous verse, verse 11, it was about the description of the form of the Supreme Lord uh, as seen by Maharaj Parikshit in his mother's womb. So we saw that last week. So today is about the birth of Emperor Parikshit and the timing of his birth in terms of the astronomical calculations, all that. Text 12. तथा सर्वगुणोदर्के सानुकूलग्रहोदये यज्ञे वंशधरा पाण्डो भूय पाण्डुरिवौजसा तथा सर्वगुणोदर्के सानुकूलग्रहोदये यज्ञे वंशधार पाण्डुर्भूय पाण्डुरिवौजसा तथा सर्वगुणोदर्के सानुकूलग्रहोदये यज्ञे वंशधरा पाण्डुर्भूय पाण्डुरिवौजसा तथा सर्वगुणोदर्के सानुकूलग्रहोदये यज्ञे वंशधरा पाण्डुर्भूय पाण्डुरिवौजसा. प्रभु.
Right, Prabhu.
Yeah, you can recite. Yeah.
Tada sarvaguno darke sanakulagrayodaye jajne vamsa dara pandur bhuva pandur ivau jasa.
Okay. Thank you, Prabhu. Synonyms: Tata, thereupon; Sarva, all; Guna, good signs; Udarke, having gradually evolved; Sa Anukula, all favorable; Grahodaya, constellation of stellar influence; Yagni, took birth; Vamshadhara, heir apparent; Pandu, of Pandu; Bhuya, being; Pandu Iva, exactly like Pandu; Ojasa, by prowess. Translation: Thereupon, when all the good signs of the zodiac gradually evolved, the heir apparent of Pandu, who would be exactly like him in prowess, took birth. So, as we know, Emperor Parikshit, he was the last surviving uh, offspring of the Pandavas after the war. So the next generation, after the next generation, which actually follows the 5 Pandavas, they were all killed, including Abhimanyu. So there was no other offspring left except for Maharaj Parikshit, and therefore the Supreme Lord saved him. And from after the reign of Maharaj Yudhishthira, the kingdom of handed over to Maharaj Parikshit. So Parikshit Maharaj comes from the lineage of Pandu, the father of the five Pandavas. So based on this description, Parikshit Maharaj was destined to be as glorious as his great grandfather. Purport: astronomical calculations of stellar influences upon a living being are not suppositions, but are factual as confirmed in Srimad Bhagavatam. So regarding this, we have actually seen in our Friday thematic studies few months back, we completed the entire series on Bhagavata cosmology. There were 9 sessions, particularly in the 4 sessions related to Madhya Loka. We saw how we saw the descriptions from Canto 5, uh, in about 5 to 6 chapters, starting from chapter 15 or 16 onwards. There were a lot of descriptions regarding Madhya Loka. So Madhya Loka is not merely about the earth. It uh, it covers all the description regarding the Bhumandal, and also the vertically it covers the space up to Antariksha. So Antariksha is actually the space between Swargaloka and the Bhumandal. So even in those chapters, we saw descriptions regarding the different planets and how they are related to our horoscope. Like, for example, this is actually from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 5. So we have already seen this in the Bhagavata cosmology series. So there are descriptions regarding all the different planets. So the sun is actually seen as separate from the stars. It is not regarded as another star, because based on the description in Bhagavatam, the even the stars, just like the moon, they also get their source of light from the sun. Because uh, in the space covered by the vertical space from the Bhumandal up to the Antariksha, it is all like the sunlight is contained within that space. So sun is the only source of light and heat. So all the stars and also the moon, they all get their source of light from the sun. Uh, Also, there's a verse from Gita chapter 10, in which the Supreme Lord himself also says, Nakshatranam aham sashi. So among the in that verse, Lord Krishna says that among the stars, he is the moon. So the stars and the moon are similar in the sense that they get their source of light from the sun. And apart from that, there are also all the various planets, starting from uh, first we have the sun, we have the Earth planet, and then vertically as we move upwards, so the sun, moon, and stars, followed by the other planets, will be visible uh, in this order. So from the verses in Bhagavatam Canto 5, chapter 22, there are descriptions regarding all the different planets and how regarding their auspiciousness, whether they are auspicious or inauspicious. For example, the planet Venus is very favorable for all living beings within this universe. Buddha or Mercury is almost always very auspicious for the inhabitants of the universe. Mars almost always creates unfavorable conditions. Brihaspati or Jupiter is very favorable to the Brahmanas of the universe. Shanichara or Saturn always very inauspicious for the universal situation. So these planetary positions, they influence our life in this universe, and obviously these are all related to the material universe, whether it is the Urdhva Loka, upper planetary system, Madhya Loka, or Adho Loka. In all these three divisions, they are all still within the material universe. So even these planetary systems, actually, within the material universe, there are 14 planetary systems in the three divisions, but these planets, they are like still within the Madhya Loka, particularly. So even these planets, they are still within the material universe, and therefore we are bound to experience all this auspiciousness or inauspiciousness, because this material world is always full of dualities, as mentioned in the Gita, chapter 15, verse 5. In that verse, it is stated, Dvandve Vimukta. So as long as we are trapped in this material universe, we'll always be experiencing dualities. On the contrary, in the spiritual world, there are no such dualities. That's why in the spiritual world, those who get liberated, once they attain the spiritual world, they'll be experiencing eternal bliss. But in the material world, as long as we are trapped here, we have to experience both, all sorts of dualities, whether it is happiness or distress, profit, loss. So that is also uh, one of the main reasons. Apart from the influence of time, we also have to go through all these different dualities. We cannot always expect to experience only happiness. So distress will also follow, then followed by happiness. So we'll be trapped in this cycle as long as we are here in the material universe. And the auspiciousness or inauspiciousness of our chart is also influenced by these planetary positions. However, these planetary positions and movements are also directly under the control of the Supreme Lord, because the Supreme Lord is the sole proprietor of the entire creation. So, as we know, the spiritual world, it's termed as Tripada Vibhuti, and the material world is known as Ekapada Vibhuti. So, the material world is only 1/4 of the entire creation, and the spiritual world is 3/4. So, even this material world with all these planetary arrangements, it is only 1/4 of the total creation. So uh, even these planetary systems within each uh, within each universal egg, these are all under the control of the Supreme Lord. So the presiding deities in all these planets, and also within the sun god, they all work according to the instructions of the Supreme Lord. In Gita 5.29 also, Lord Krishna says, Bhuktaram Yajna Tapasam Sarvaloka Maheshwaram Surdam Sarvabhutanam Nyatma Mam Shanti Mrichati. Sarvaloka Maheshwaram, the Supreme Lord says that he is the supreme controller of all the lokas, meaning he is the supreme controller of all the planets. And that's why it is very important that by understanding the actual position of the Supreme Lord, and also all the other demigods and presiding deities of the different planets, we can easily understand that the Supreme Lord is the supreme controller, and therefore, simply by surrendering to him, we don't have to approach all the different demigods and presiding deities separately, because ultimately they themselves are under the control of the supreme controller. So that's why Lord Krishna makes it very clear in that verse in Gita 5.29 Bhoktaram Yajna Tapasam. He is the supreme enjoyer of all the sacrifices. Normally, sacrifices are conducted to satisfy all the different demigods. However, even when we conduct those different sacrifices, still he is the supreme enjoyer of those sacrifices. And even though it may appear like uh, whatever whatever vows that are uh, whatever vows or boons are granted by the demigods, but it is only due to the sanction of the Supreme Lord. Next line, Sarvaloka Maheshwaram, as mentioned earlier, the Supreme Lord is the supreme controller of all the planets, meaning the planets are controlled by the presiding deities, and the presiding deities of each planet, they are also under the control of the Supreme Lord. So even they are controlled by the Supreme Lord directly, and therefore surrendering to the Supreme Lord will also ensure that we can cross over the kind of problems that we might face due to the inauspicious effects of the some of the planets. And the third line, Suhurdam Sarva Bhutanam. The Supreme Lord is the supreme well-wisher of all living entities, not just for human beings, for all the different living entities. He is the supreme well-wisher. Nyatma Mam Shantim Richati. So those who understand that the Supreme Lord Krishna is the supreme enjoyer, those who understand that he is the supreme controller, those who understand that he is the supreme well-wisher, such people, they can attain peace. Nyatva Mam Shantim Richati. So whatever astronomical calculations and the different types of charts that we see, all those are due to these planetary positions and movements, and they themselves are always under the control of the Supreme Lord. Hence, that's why it has also been stated by the Supreme Lord himself that the wise who know, like example in Gita 10.8, Aham Sarvasya Prabho Matta Sarvam Pravartate Iti Matva Bhajante Imam Buddha Bhava Samanita. The Supreme Lord says that the wise who know that he is the origin of everything, both the spiritual and material worlds, so they will worship him. The wise will worship him. Those who are less intelligent worship the demigods. However, even the demigods themselves, they are they themselves are empowered by the Supreme Lord. Every living being is controlled by the laws of nature at every minute, just as a citizen is controlled by the influence of the state. The state laws are grossly observed, but the laws of material nature, being subtle to our gross understanding, cannot be experienced grossly. So again, we are subject to the laws of material nature, meaning material nature itself is a byproduct of the Supreme Lord's inferior energy, and the laws of material nature are binding in this material universe. So those who are the liberated souls who attain the spiritual world, they are no longer bound by these laws of material nature. However, the conditioned souls will always be bound by the laws of material nature, and it applies to all the different living entities. So again, as stated by the Supreme Lord himself, all these aspects make this material world Dukalayam. As stated in the Bhagavad Gita 3.9, every action of life produces another reaction, which is binding upon us, and only those who are acting on behalf of Yajna, Vishnu, are not bound by reactions. So 3.9, Yajnartat Karmano Nyata Lokoyam Karma Vandana. Taratam Karma Kauntaya. So in that verse, it is stated that those who work for Vishnu, those who perform their karmas for for the pleasure of Yajna or Vishnu, because the meaning of Vishnu, it is also synonymous with Yajna, the supreme enjoyer of sacrifices. So when we perform our duties as a sacrifice to satisfy Lord Vishnu, then we are not bound by the effects of those karmas. So even when we talk about karmas, there are three types of karma: karma, akarma, vikarma. So when we perform karmas, it means that we are performing fruitive actions, fruitive activity, uh, with the expectation of wanting to enjoy the results. So in the Vedas, especially in the Karma Kanda portions, those who perform the Karma Kanda activities, they do it with the intention of wanting to enjoy heavenly pleasures. And the Supreme Lord Himself has made it clear that whether it is karma or vikarma, both are equally binding. Regarding vikarma, vikarma is the forbidden actions, actions which are not according to scriptural injunctions. They violate the scriptural injunctions. So vikarmas bring sinful reactions. Karmas are the fruitive activity performed with the expectation to enjoy uh, heavenly pleasures, especially those activities in the karma kanda portions. But regarding those activities, also the Supreme Lord has made it very clear in Gita chapter 9, especially in verses 20 and 21. Those who perform fruitive activities with the intention of wanting to enjoy heavenly pleasures, of course, they get elevated to the heavenly planets, but that is only for a limited period of time. They can enjoy all those heavenly pleasures for a specific period of time until the piety expires. After enjoying in the Divya Swarga, because even for Swargaloka, there are three types of Swargas. There are actually three types of Swargalokas. Divya Swarga is the Swargaloka in the upper planetary system. Then even in the Madhya Loka, there are Bhauma Swarga regions. Actually, as we have seen in the Bhagavata Cosmology series, this description is also there in the fifth canto. In Bhumandal, especially in the Jambudvipa itself, Jambudvipa consists of 9 varshas. Bharata Varsha is just one of the 9 varshas. So apart from Bharata Varsha, all the other varshas, which are actually not visible to us, not accessible to us, those are the Bhauma Swarga regions. And apart from that, there are also the Swargalokas in the subterranean parts or the Adoloka. So actually, even those lokas, they are also like quite similar in terms of opulence to the Divya Swargas. And those Swargalokas in the subterranean planets, in the Adoloka planets, they are known as Bila Swarga. So the three types of Swargalokas are Divya Swarga, Bhauma Swarga, and Bila Swarga. So in Bila Swarga also, as explained in Canto 5, even in the 7 Bila Swarga regions, they are also like even more materially opulent, because there are descriptions about how those planets, they are very full of jewelries and other elements like diamond and all that. So the effulgence from those jewelries, they illuminate all these subterranean planets. So the sunlight does not reach the subterranean planets, the 7 lower planetary systems. However, they are illuminated by these materially opulent jewelry. So even the Bila Swarga regions, they are also very materially opulent. However, the residents of those below Swarga regions, they are devoid of Krishna consciousness. So as we have seen also from chapter 14 of the Gita, in chapter 14 of the Gita regarding the three modes of material nature, even in that chapter, it is stated that those who are in the mode of pure goodness, uh, not pure goodness actually, because that will be like transcending the modes. Those who are fully in the mode of goodness, they get to attain the Divya Surga. But those who are bound by the mode of passion, they will be born again in this Madhyaloka, in the middle earth planet. Those who are always in the mode of ignorance, they will be degraded to the lower planetary systems, the below Swarga region. So even those who are bound by the mode of ignorance, they will be sent to the below Swarga region, where they can still enjoy material opulence, but uh, they completely lose the opportunity to regain their God consciousness. So being blessed with material opulence may not necessarily be a good thing, because ultimately anything that is material, whether it is our material wealth or any other types of material opulence, it can never make us qualified to go back to Godhead. So even in chapter 9, verses 20 and 21, the Supreme Lord himself says, those who go to the Divya Swarga regions in the upper planetary system, even they can enjoy heavenly pleasures for a certain period of time until all the piety is expired. However, after enjoying that, they still have to return to the middle earth planet. So that is the major drawback of being too obsessed with performing karma or the fruitive activity. So those who understand the essence of devotional service should always focus on performing akarma, meaning actions which are completely detached or devoid of material desires. And that's why in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, it is stated that the topmost form of devotional service is actually that which is devoid of uh, all sorts of material desires or fruitive activity. Anyabhilashita sunyam jnana karmadhyanavutam anukulyena krishnanu shilnam bhaktir uttamaha, the topmost devotional service. So those who uh, really want to get rid of this material entanglement, they should really understand the difference between uh, uh, rituals and spirituality. The main problem with our community is that a lot of people, they believe in performing rituals, and mostly it is their main intention is to gain material benefits. And that's why the Supreme Lord himself says that those who are less intelligent, they worship the demigods and they always seek material benefits. Anything that is material is never going to be permanent. Even the material world itself, it is temporary. Dukalayam ashashwatam. The material world is not false, but it is temporary. The material world itself is subject to endless cycles of creation and annihilation. So during the various cycles of creation and annihilation, all the living entities also undergo birth and death helplessly. It is such a helpless condition, and uh, again, that's why the Supreme Lord himself says that this material world is Dukalayam. However, those who are too obsessed with material designations and those who lack self-realization, they tend to be too obsessed with the ritualistic aspects of religious practices. However, we should aim to understand spirituality instead of being too obsessed with ritualistic practices, because whatever material boons or material benefits that we get, they are always going to be temporary, and it will only increase our entanglement to this material world. So, topmost devotional service, Shilanam Bhakti Uttama, as stated in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, Bhakti Uttama, the topmost devotional service, should be devoid of all material desires and also from all sorts of fruitive activity. So as long as we perform, of course, vikarma is, it refers to forbidden activity and it brings sinful reactions. But even performing karma or fruitive activities with the intention of wanting to enjoy the fruits of those actions, even they will bind us to this material world, in the sense that we can get elevated to Swargaloka, but after enjoying heavenly pleasures there, we still have to return to this middle planet. And if even if we are always bound by the mode of passion to perform fruitive activities, we still have to somehow return to this middle planet. So going back to Godhead will completely be out of the question. Only those who are acting on behalf of Yajna Vishnu are not bound by reactions. So only by performing akarma, by being detached from the fruits of actions, by dedicating everything to the Supreme Lord, as he himself says in Gita 9.27, Yat karosi yat asnasi yat yosi dadasyat yat tapasyasi kaunteya tat kurusum adarpanam. Dedicate all actions and everything to me. Our actions are judged by the higher authorities, the agents of the Lord, and thus we are awarded bodies according to our activities. So our eternal companion, who witnesses all our activities, the Paramatma in our heart, he accompanies us birth after birth, as our spirit soul transmigrates from one material body to another. He accompanies us and he monitors all our activities, and as we perform different types of activities based on our tendencies, our super soul, he awards us different types of body according to our activities. So this is why there are 84 lakh different types of material bodies to accommodate all the different spirit souls according to their tendencies and activities which they have been performing since time immemorial. The law of nature is so subtle that every part of our body is influenced by respective stars, and a living being obtains his working body to fulfill his terms of imprisonment by the manipulation of such astronomical influence. Man's destiny is therefore ascertained by the birth time constellation of stars, and a factual horoscope is made by a learned astrologer. It is a great science, and misuse of a science does not make it useless. So, though there may be fraudsters who masquerade as astrologers, that doesn't mean that the science itself is false. Maharaj Parikshit, or even the personality of Godhead, appear in certain constellation of good stars, and thus the influence is exerted upon the body, thus born at an auspicious moment. So regarding the constellation of stars, it is also mentioned in Bhagavatam, Canto 5. So there are 27 stars in the constellation, and the 28th star is called Abhijit. So the zodiac signs are also corresponding to these 27 star constellations. the most auspicious constellation of stars takes place during the appearance of the Lord in this material world, and it is specifically called Jayanti, a word not to be abused for any other purposes. So the word Jayanti is meant for the appearance of either the Supreme Lord or his most confidential associates for those exalted personalities. However, uh, the term is being misused or abused for those who are not worthy of it. So, Srila Prabhupada has made it very clear here that the word Jayanti is not to be abused for any other purposes. But unfortunately, in Bharat, this word has been misused mainly for political purposes. One example from here, this from the website of Tamil Nadu government regarding the public holidays for year 2023. So as we can see here, so this is that specific type of nonsense highlighted by Prabhupada when he says that the word Jayanti should not be abused. So it is meant for exalted personalities, whether it is the Supreme Lord or his eternal associates. So it should not be abused like this. However, it's not surprising that the Tamil Nadu government is doing this. So this is the level of ignorance among the Bharatiyas in Kali Yuga. But at least as a consolation, in this document produced by the central government, at least in this document, they did not misuse the term. So at least that's like a consolation. Maharaj Parikshit was not only a great Kshatriya emperor, but also a great devotee of the Lord. Thus, he cannot take his birth at any inauspicious moment, as a proper place and time is selected to receive a respectable personage, so also to receive such a personality as Maharaj Parikshit, who was especially cared for by the Supreme Lord. A suitable moment is chosen when all good stars assemble together to exert their influence upon the king. So uh, Maharaj Parikshit did not actually pray to all the different planets and stars for the ideal constellation to be assembled. He was an exalted devotee of the Supreme Lord, and therefore the Supreme Lord, being the supreme controller of all the different planetary systems, he made the arrangement. And during the time of his birth, all the good stars were assembled together to exert their influence upon the king. Thus, he took his birth just to be known as the great hero of Srimad Bhagavatam. This suitable arrangement of astral influences is never a creation of man's will, but is the arrangement of the superior management of the agency of the Supreme Lord. All the different presiding deities of the different planets, they are all working under the instructions of the Supreme Lord. And therefore, rather than going to pray to all the different demigods and all the different presiding deities of the different planets, it is much wiser to simply surrender to the Supreme Lord, as he himself says in the Bhagavad Gita. Of course, the arrangement is made according to the good or bad deeds of the living being. Herein lies the importance of pious acts performed by the living being. So it is actually nonsensical to simply think that uh, we can perform all sorts of vikarma, forbidden acts which are against the scriptural injunctions, and surrender to the Supreme Lord. So that is not possible. Our actions will also produce sinful reactions, especially the vikarmas will produce sinful reactions, and the influence of the planets will also act according to our good or bad deeds. Only by pious acts can one be allowed to get good wealth, good education, and beautiful features. The samskaras of the school of Sanatana Dharma man's eternal engagement. So, as we have seen also in one of our Friday thematic study session, and there was also in one Bhagavatam session also we saw the aspects related to Sanatana Dharma. Sanatana Dharma is not equal to the sectarian religions. Dharma itself cannot be equated to religion. It is the eternal occupation of all living entities, not just for human beings. Whenever we talk about religions, it is sectarian and it is often only applicable to human beings. But Sanatana Dharma is the eternal occupation of all the living entities. The samskaras of the school of Sanatana Dharma, man's eternal engagement, are highly suitable for creating an atmosphere for taking advantage of good stellar influences, and therefore Garbhadana Samskara, or the first seedling purificatory process prescribed for the higher caste, is the beginning of all pious acts to receive a good, pious, and intelligent class of men in human society. So it is especially mentioned here that this ritual, the Garbhadana Samskara, it is particularly prescribed for the higher caste. However, there's nothing mentioned here like it is forbidden for the lower caste, but it is especially like uh, compulsory for the higher caste. Otherwise, uh, even those in the higher caste will be producing unwanted population. There will be peace and prosperity in the world due to good and sane population only. There is hell and disturbance only because of the unwanted, insane populace addicted to sex indulgence. So even in Gita chapter 1, Arjuna talks about Valana Shankara about the unwanted population. Uh, and also from the Bhagavatam, we have also seen that when this specific Garbhadana Samskara is not observed, it creates turbulence. There is one example from the Bhagavatam itself. Uh, can Prabhu tell which example is it about the unwanted population created in Bhagavatam? Hmm? Prabhu, there's an example from third canto, example of unwanted population. Okay, actually from third canto, the birth of uh, Hiranyaksha and Hiranyakashipu. So Diti, uh, regarding the pregnancy of Diti, it took place at a very inauspicious period. So these rituals were not followed, and that resulted in the birth of those demons who created disturbance to the entire universe. So that's all for today. We have covered verse 12. So next week we'll cover verse 13. Any questions or comments? Mm, okay, thank you. Hare Krishna.